Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the wasmCloud community meeting for Wednesday, February 21st. We've got a pretty sweet little demo right in the beginning where we're going to talk about some of the things that are new in 0.82 with an accompanying blog post for your own reading and leisure. We are going to do a little bit of a discussion. It's part of a continuation from last week's community meeting where we had a call to action around what we'd love to have you all try for yourselves. And then we'll do our weekly roadmap check-in as we go through the first quarter of this year and work towards wasmCloud 1.0. So let's go ahead and get started. First part of the agenda today, I wanted to talk about some of the new things that are coming that are here in wasmCloud 0.82. So last week, I believe where we were was a release candidate on the morning of wasmCloud Wednesday. And then by the end of the day, we had 0.82 out with the new version of Wash, the CLI, and the library, and all those things. So I want to give, first of all, a shout out and thank you to Eric Gregory, who wrote up this blog on wasmCloud 0.82. All the things, all the highlights that are new in there. Eric, would you like to say anything about it before I get into it and shamelessly show off your work?
Not at all. Yeah, hopefully just gives kind of a crisp breakdown of all the features and take it away.
Yeah, so I just sent that in the chat as well. If you're watching from one of our various stream locations, you can always just go to wasmcloud.com and it's under the blog section. But some of the biggest things that are coming in this release are full and stable support for WASI 0.2, aka WASI Preview 2, aka WASI 0.20, any of those names. All of the APIs that are in WASI 0.2 are pinned in this version of wasmCloud. And this also offers us a certain level of stability moving forward, where with WASI Preview 2 also comes the ability for any further WASI previews, which there is also this from WASI Preview 1 to WASI Preview 2, for us to be able to adapt APIs from one version to the next. So over the last couple of months, as we've added support for WebAssembly components, we kind of had this disclaimer around them saying, hey, by the way, we're kind of pinning to release candidates here. As we go from version to version of components, you may need to update your dependencies. But now we have a certain level of ability to know that there's a stable base for people building with components and move from there to adapt, even if it's a version, as we move forward that is new, like WASI Preview 3 or WASI 0.21, things like that. There's a bunch of quality of life improvements for the local developer experience, a couple bugs fixed, all of those things. And in the last community meeting, I actually showed off support for, I think it was the last one. It was either that one or the one before, talking about full hotel observability. So we've had traces for a while. OpenTelemetry logging exporting support landed in 0.82 and metrics are going to land actually in 1.0 because the level of support that we had at the time would just be one very simple metric. So we want to essentially release that with multiple useful metrics for things are proud of. So there are there's a good bit of detail in this blog around what's changing, kind of recapping. I'm essentially just rehashing some of the content in this blog in my own words, but you can look forward to here. I'll show a quick demo of this in a moment. But one thing that I want to specifically call out is the fact that 0.82 is the release where using WebAssembly modules in the WasmBus RPC protocol is officially deprecated. So it still works in 0.82, but components do too. And now is a good time for you folks who are working with modules, which would have either been our Rust or TinyGo, basically Wasm Cloud specific APIs to take a look at how the world looks in component land. So I'm going to skip ahead very briefly to the discussion that's on our agenda, just for any folks who are looking at wasmCloud for the first time, or if you've already gotten a couple of things built with modules and WasmBus, go take a look at our quick start under the creating a project, adding capability section. These are very similar to the previous experience. It's just using all WASI 0.2 APIs. We're using component tooling. In all of these, there's no wasmCloud specific dependencies in the component, which is all super cool. And you can choose Rust, TinyGo, TypeScript, or Python. So you can get more languages out of the box for that as well. So that is the call out. I just want to we were already there in conversation, so I'll skip ahead to that in the agenda. But for now, I want to show just two of the things that may seem really minor, but we're very proud of in this release of wasmCloud. So I've gone ahead and installed Wash 0.26. If you already installed Wash before, we updated all of our package managers and all the things that you normally do when you release software. So you can update to 0.26. And what I wanted to show was if you run wash new actor nowadays, you no longer get the kind of hello world and KB counter templates only in Rust. We actually have the same template essentially again across these four different languages. And we're planning to add to this with multiple capabilities. We may even segment this off kind of by language. So you can say, hey, create a new actor project in Rust, and then we can give you all of the things that are in Rust. But if we take a look at something like TypeScript, we can generate this project. Once we clone that down, we can go into hello and run wash. Actually, we run npm install to install the dependencies for this TypeScript component. And then we can wash build in order to build from this TypeScript code a WASM component. Now, oh, I'm too used to Rust and thinking it's going to take too long. So now that we have that component actually built, one thing that you had to do essentially in the previous experience is say, hey, okay, great. Here is my path to my WebAssembly component. This is what I'm going to start. So I'm going to go edit my WADM YAML and change out this file path with the path to the local disk. And there are good reasons for us requiring a path here that is absolute. I will avoid going down the rabbit hole, but I'm happy to answer questions about that for why we had it this way. But I want to show that with the newest version of Wash, you can actually just leave this relative path. So if we launch a wasmCloud host just in the background, and we deploy this WADM manifest, if you take a look at the WADM manifest, nothing has actually changed. We still just have the relative path here. But if you do a wash app get with TypeScript hello world, you can actually see that we have essentially replaced that relative path with an absolute path for you. Really small tooling updates here, really, but it does provide a certain level of niceness when you're starting out with the project. Um, while I'm at this point, might as well mention that the reason why we require absolute paths is to make folks think about where they're putting their specific files if they're going to be starting WebAssembly components or capability providers from a file on a system. It's worth noting that while all of this is on my local machine and it's going to work all nice this way, it may work really nice this way with a relative path. If I'm deploying wasmCloud somewhere, the relative path is a little bit delicate. It has to be relative to where the host is running, not necessarily where you're running the command, et cetera, et cetera. So wanted to just at least comment on that. So with that, if we take a look at our Wash app list, we can see that the TypeScript app went ahead and deployed. This isn't really anything new here. I believe I've demoed TypeScript in a previous community call, but we can officially invoke that component and get hello from TypeScript. So what I really wanted to show off here, since we talked about OpenTelemetry last week, just a couple of the new project templates that you can get your hands on. All of them effectively have the same experience. Generate the project, run wash build, and then run wash app deploy to launch that. And all those things are just declaratively applied to your lattice. So that is essentially a look around some of the other developer experience things that we've improved since we released 0.82. And I want to do one more shout out. Go back to the browser here. We changed quite a lot of things between 0.81 and 0.82. There were a bunch of PRs, and I actually went in and removed all the like dependabot bump things from here. So these are all features, chores, fixes. I want to give a shout out, wow, to Lost and Brittany or Horatio and Ritesh for putting in their first PRs to this release of wasmCloud. It's always nice to have new folks contributing to the core runtime. And as you can see from this contributor section, we've got folks from many different organizations and different levels of contribution here in the runtime. So it's really great to see. Really appreciate you all and for putting in fixes and new features. And it's very obvious to me that folks are watching and keeping an eye out for where we could use some help because anytime we put out a good first issue there in the issue list, usually only a day or two before someone comes along and wants to try it out. So all great stuff. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. Small demo, but did folks have any other questions about 0.82? Alrighty, then we can go ahead and move on to the roadmap update. So I'll go ahead and send this in the chat as well. But this is just the only project board that we have in the wasmCloud organization, so you should be able to find it relatively quickly. We are full steam ahead with collaborating and implementing WRPC. So Roman has made really significant progress in the WRPC library department. Um, Myself and Victor and Taylor are all swarming on implementing that on the wasmCloud host side. You all may have seen my shout out a little earlier in the week in the wasmCloud Slack, but I just said, hey, just so you all know, we are going to be iterating on this feature in a feature branch. It's Git strategy isn't something that I'm too interested in enforcing really hard with wasmCloud, but we're planning on making a lot of changes to the wasmCloud host crate and to the testing suite during this iteration, the part where we're testing components and modules, for example. So I want to let us know that we're doing some big changes there. And if you are working on a feature in wasmCloud and you're concerned that we might be clobbering over those changes by modifying a lot of that stuff, please just reach out to me on Slack. I can definitely help out with that. So we're moving full steam ahead there. I'm also happy to talk about WRPC a little bit more in depth if folks are interested, but we have absolutely completed more than we have in progress or remaining. Victor went through and actually closed out just a couple of RFCs that we had already knocked out and oh God, just going to use too much corporate speak that we already knocked out around implementing metrics and defining interfaces using WIT. So the things that we're working on right now around WRPC, of course, we have some additional work like around pinning our WITs to 1.0 just in the future, and adding a couple of events to the wasmCloud side. One that I did want to identify as a great first issue for folks if they wanted to take on something that is contributing to the 1.0 milestone is this drop deprecated wasmbus.evt.lattice subject. We've got a couple of places in the host where essentially every time a significant event happens in the wasmCloud host, we'll publish an event. Things like an actor was scaled up or a link definition was put or the host started in the first place. And previously we'd publish those on a NATS subject wasmbus.evt.lattice. So most of the time you would see this on wasmbus.evt default. And we actually changed that to be wasmbus.evt.lattice.event name. And this is really nice because you can filter for the exact event that you want at the subscriber level. It makes our tooling a little bit easier. This is probably not something that you would see manually unless you were trying to observe the events that were going on in the system. But for like a WADM, this is a huge help for receiving events that we care about. So the ask on this one is just all those places where we're publishing on the old topic for backwards compatibility. We can actually drop that now because all of our tooling has moved forward a minor release past the point where we were using the old subject. So folks are interested in contributing to the core runtime, this is a great place to start. And I thought I indicated that already. Boom, it's officially a good first issue. So if anyone is interested in working on that, just drop a comment on the issue and we can go from there. Other than that, I'm going to keep an eye out for other things on the 1.0 and future roadmaps that are great for folks to kind of get their hands dirty with the Rust code. These two blocked efforts have just a few more things to scope out before we can turn them into concrete tasks or drop them from the roadmap. So making really great progress towards 1.0. And hopefully by next week, I can show you, no matter how terminal demo-y it is, kind of a work in progress, working version of WRPC. I've seen it work, but I want to show you something a little cooler than that. Any questions on the roadmap, work to be done, or folks have things that they feel aren't captured here that we should be doing before 1.0? Nice. We have perfectly estimated our software and all the work that we need to do for it. Okay, then I think that that's the end of our scheduled agenda in terms of demo and discussion. So go ahead and turn it over to free time. Anybody have things that they wanted to chat about? wasmCloud ecosystem, general WebAssembly land?
Did you did you want me to go talk about the fuzzing, Brooks?
Oh yeah, yes, yes, yes. Let's do that. Colin,
Yeah,
did you want a little bit of a background about
y- yeah.
um,
There's a feature to add fuzz testing that Brooks put in the Rust channel. And I am probably the last person who should pick this one up, but I did because I've never done fuzzing. And anyway, I wanted to kind of take something that wasn't super critical path and just kind of work on it. So um, Rust, so fuzzing, you know. I'm guessing everybody's familiar with the idea of fuzzing, which is you just send a whole bunch of random bits at something um, and see if it breaks anything. So it's really just looking for fatal errors. Um, and Brooks thought, or whoever created this, Brooks created it, that it would be a good idea to especially on the WAS and bus stuff, just stuff going over NATs. Okay, sorry, I'm watching the chat. I shouldn't be watching the chat. So anyway, the thing with Rust um, is that it's really hard to do this. For my job, I'm working TypeScript, um, and there are interfaces you can. It's really easy to stub stuff and mock stuff, but it's very hard in Rust because it's statically typed. It's strongly typed. So there are a couple. If anybody has any opinions, mockall is the main mocking tool. No, sorry. So fuzzing in Rust, unless you want to stand up the entire wasmCloud host every time through every single pass of the fuzzer, which is a horrible idea. It's very hard to just it's very hard to call a specific function, specific method of the wasm-bus host without standing everything out. And that's kind of the limitations of Rust. It's really the limitations of macros and macros on top of macros. which, on Rust, I always think I've gotten pretty far, and then I step away for a few months, and then I feel like I'm starting back at zero again. But yeah, so it's very tricky to use the macros around Tokyo and the macros around fuzzing. There is one called Quick Check. I don't even know. But so anyway, the long story short is I'm going to try to use mock all in order to mock and not have everything have to get bootstrapped in to every single fuzz run. So I think the way, at least with the mock all, which is the most common Rust mock framework, you have to start using traits. So the host in wasmbus we'd have to define a trait like wasmbus host and host implements that, and then kind of take, for the functions that we want to mock at least, define in that trait those functions, stubs or whatever. I don't know. What's the correct term in Rust? I don't know what the correct term is. Prototypes in C? I don't know. So anyway, define those traits and then have it implement and then mock them, mock those functions correctly. And that's at least what I'm thinking. So I don't know. If anybody has any familiarity with mocking in Rust or fuzzing, it'd be a good time for you to help us or help me. But yeah, I don't know. That's it. Little disjointed. Probably could have done that better, but whatever. It's just going on YouTube,
No, I feel like I usually jump in a little too quickly at the end. I don't let people pop
Yeah.
in. I filed the issue because I'd seen cargo fuzz before and thought, ooh, that seems nice.
Yeah, it is.
And I know the folks with Wasm Time,
They fuzz.
fuzzing. Wait, what?
Yeah, they fuzz. They fuzz
Oh
quite a bit.
yeah, they do fuzz. They got a lot of fuzzes. So yeah, more. I'll be quiet. Do folks have folks done fuzzing in Rust projects before and want to have opinions or thoughts?
Taylor has a question.
Don't call attention to my terrible dad jokes.
I don't even know that. Yeah.
It's a good crate name though.
Yeah. Well, if I come up with if we come up with a series of macros that allow for parameters to be passed into fuzzed functions, we could call it that, Taylor, or any other dad joke that you have. Seems like there's a demand for this. But maybe the right answer is just to use mocks.
I don't have an answer for that question, but often, and I can at least speak for what WasmTime does, we treat most of the errors that are surfaced from our fuzzers as security vulnerabilities, potentially. And so when we find a bug there, we evaluate that and then follow our security disclosure process. And so we don't usually post the bug public on GitHub until after it's been evaluated so that we can make sure we're following all the right channels for that. Probably related here, I think, depending on the layer and that you're fuzzing is where that's important.
Yeah, that's a good point. If we can get it to work, don't report the bugs right away publicly. Got it.
There's probably a better way to
Yeah.
say that. Do report the bugs. But maybe not publicly if it's in an area that could have a security vulnerability. Okay, I'm done.
I think it is worth mentioning that we're not new to that process. We've gone through the full CVE security advisory process before. So as it goes for here's your political answer, Bailey. As it goes for any security vulnerabilities, you can report them through the GitHub security advisory method that's in our security.md in the repo. It will take appropriate action to get that patch and release and all of that stuff. Back to fuzzing, though, Colin, I think you made a great point though in the thread, because when I thought of this, or not fuzzing, when I created the issue, what I had in mind was something like, when it comes to the wasmCloud host accepting arbitrary values as input, it really is only on the either the command line, like right when you start it up, which is relatively solid. We have static, like strong types on the command line parsing. So, like 99% of those tests would just fail immediately with a failure to parse. And accepting things on the control interface, we also have strongly typed things there. So if you were to just throw random bytes at the control interface, it's pretty much always just going to fall through to our, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not a thing that I accept. That's a weird topic, those kinds of things. But I do think it would be really, I think it would be more useful to take the approach that you're suggesting, where the individual functions, like a valid structure and a valid type, but garbage values. Like for example, when we say, hey, you should go download this payload from this URL, right? If the URL is nothing, like just a random string, or if it's a path to somewhere else, like that would be something really good to know works. Or if you throw, the max concurrency count is a U32. If you give it a U64, does it explode or does it fail to parse? Like those kinds of things I think would be more useful for what I really want to test and know about, which is if you just spammed the control interface with moderately valid structures, but garbage information that the host doesn't fall over.
Yeah, and I think also that the idea is if we could get some sort of stubbing, mocking, fakes system going, we'd have unit tests. Which isn't something. It's hard in Rust. I mean, you get the advantage of you don't need as much. It's not like JavaScript, right? Where you really need good unit tests on every function and puzzling and things like that, because this JavaScript will just take whatever you want and turn it into whatever you want. But we don't have, like, at least in what I've seen, we don't have really good, like, strong unit tests. So maybe it'll be good. It'll be more than just fuzzing.
Yeah, that's a great point. Colin, before I forget, this may fall into um there be dragons area of contributing now. If you come up with a if we were to have a wasmCloud host trait that the host implements in order to do some of the functionality, or maybe it's just like wasmCloud control interface trait and the host implements it. We are changing a lot in the host structure,
Yeah,
that
it's a
file right.
long term goal. Yeah,
Okay.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just it may not be an issue depending on the timeline of when you wanted to work on this. But so basically I'm trying to say, if you like do it now, then it would probably be okay, and like we would work around the changes. But if it was in 2 weeks, you might have to deal with a bunch of conflicts.
Oh yeah, no, I don't worry
Um,
about it. I'm not. If there's something more pressing, I'd be happy to work on things like that too. But
okay.
this seemed like something that I intentionally chose because it wasn't part of the next release, right? So we can talk
Uh,
about it later too. But
that
yeah,
sounds good.
no expectations on this end.
Yeah, and well, that works then. And thank you again, Colin, for spiking into this and seeing that, how the tools work, how we may need to change some things to use them properly.
Yeah, happy to help.
All right, do folks have other comments regarding buzzing, or other things they want to talk about, general WebAssembly or wasmCloud ecosystem? All right, folks. Well, then I think we can probably just call it for today. Lots of awesome progress to the wasmCloud 1.0 milestone. I will take another look over at the roadmap to check and see if there's anything there that would really be a good first issue that I haven't called out already for folks to, or just in general, a great issue to take right now as we are working pretty heavily on the RPC layer of wasmCloud. And I will do that and then bring it up next week in our roadmap update. So thanks so much for coming in today, and we'll see you next week.